Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Surah Yunus, chapter 10, and we will cover verses 11 to 20 today. These are our references, and this is our contact in case there is any query or question. Recap so far. If we remember, we had covered verses 1 to 10 last weekend. Through the Quran, we acquire knowledge of the system of Deen and its finer details which aid in understanding Rububiyyat in the universe. This is important. This word Rububiyyat comes repeatedly in our representations, that we should understand that what is the aim of human creation and what is going on around the world. That wherever there are human laws, how do the human world works, and how does the world work which is outside the human domain. So this is something which we should keep it in mind, and it keeps us focused. Wahi was sent to mankind through the medium of the messengers of Allah, all of whom were human beings. So we are important as human beings because messengers were human beings. The universe was created in 6 stages, and the earth was made suitable for the sustenance of man who possesses choice and intent. If you remember, we said that 6 stages took millions of years according to our count, and we are here for a very finite time. An average, let's say average lifespan of a human being is roughly 100 years maximum, and out of which the adult part, or the part where he or she is more self-conscious and more aware, is far shorter. So Allah has gone to so much detail that for human beings, and that is what puts a lot of importance on our creation as human beings. So we should value our short stay in this life. The law of requital was put in place so that each and every deed of man manifests its outcome. Man was given the potentials to understand the functioning of the laws in the outer world as well as the issues related to his own psyche. Time was created through the alternation of day and night to make man aware of his finite physical existence in this world. Both paths of life were made clear to him in his earthly life, i.e., destructive results will be the consequence of wrong deeds. So if there is ruin and destruction and negative things happening in the world, that means we are not behaving according to the values of the Quran. And righteous deeds after acquiring Iman will lead to pleasant outcomes. Now let us look at the first verse of our today's talk. Time of respite is kept for a purpose. وَلَوْ يُؤَجِّلُ اللَّهُ لِلنَّاسِ الشَّرَّ أَسْتِجَالَهُمْ بِالْخَيْرِ لَقُضِيَ عَلَيْهِمْ أَجَلُهُمْ فَنَظَرُ الَّذِينَ لَا يَرْجُونَ لِقَاءَنَا فِي طُغْيَانِهِمْ يَعْمَهُونَ. I put highlighted لَا يَرْجُونَ لِقَاءَنَا. And see the way in which man makes haste for achieving his own benefit. If the law of requital of Allah had also made haste in meting out harm in the same way, then the time of these people who tread on wrong paths would have ended earlier. But he has kept a time period between seeding and its fruition. And we can witness it all around us, that when we sow seed, it takes time to grow into a tree or into a plant. Hence, what happens according to this law of requital is that those people who deny this law of requital of Allah, they are not held accountable immediately. So it takes time. We have gone through law of respite. They are left in their transgression so that they keep straying in bewilderment and confusion. And this is something which looks a bit derogatory, but fact is that if we are bewildered and confused and we are not sure where we are heading for, and we think that the life will end with death, then of course we are in a mode of transgression. So that is the way we should look at it, that if we are lost, and even if we are aware of it or not, that we are lost or not, still the results will manifest themselves in our life if we are not following the right path. If there is an immediate grip on a wrong step, then this principle which we have established, that man is able to adopt the correct path without any compulsion and coercion, after total reflection and reasoning with his free volition to adopt the correct path, its same would have been lost. So this time of respite has been kept purposely so that we mend our ways and after seeing the wrong results of our wrong deeds, we should come to the right path. Remaining aware of the time of respite helps change our life. We are aware of the law of respite, which is about the time interval between the time of our deeds and the manifestation of its results. Indeed, our whole physical life is a big time interval leading to our ultimate departure from this life through the medium of death. This point I added later because if we see that whole of our life is time of respite, we might think that as we are heading towards our physical death, that our time of respite is ending. Yes, in a way, the time of respite is ending because of what we can do in our finite life. But because for mu'mineen, that is the beginning of the next stage of our life. So Quran is preparing us or helping us to prepare for that stage while we are striving to establish the system of deen. Here the Quran has pointed to us that the way that we want quick results in our life, even at the cost of other equal human beings, if the negative aspects of these deeds were manifested immediately, then none of us would have been around on the earth. And I've quoted a verse here, وَلَوْ يُؤَاخِذُ اللَّهُ النَّاسَ بِظُلْمِهِمْ مَا تَرَكَ عَلَيْهَا مِنْ دَابَّةٍ وَلَكِنْ يُؤَخِّرُهُمْ إِلَىٰ أَجَلٍ مُسَمَّى. If Allah had held people accountable the moment they did injustice, none would have been left alive. So Quran is inviting us to think very profoundly the way we live in our life and the way we then ultimately leave this life. It is just that respite is given for stated term. We can figure it out ourselves. And particularly this law is very visible in the collective life of human beings, that it takes time for collective effects of human deeds to materialize after some time. The next point is for our teaching, training, and making it part of our profound understanding, i.e. to develop that kind of psyche where we understand this law of respite. However, it does not mean that we should not carry out our duty of promoting good and forbidding evil when we can. By thinking that we have plenty of time left in life, we will do it later or let someone else do it. Not to be upset by the conduct and behavior of these people is part of developing understanding of ourselves and continuing on our path of Eimaan and Saleh deeds. If we sow the seed by following the instructions and provide the correct environment, it will grow into a plant, leading to this conclusion that the law of Allah helps to achieve results if it is followed precisely. Let us go to the next verse, 10:12, unguided human psyche's behavior. وَإِذَا مَسَّ الْإِنسَانَ ضُرٌّ دَعَانَا لِجَنبِهِ أَوْ قَاعِدًا أَوْ قَائِمًا فَلَمَّا كَشَفْنَا عَنْهُ ضُرَّهُ مَرَّ كَأَن لَّمْ يَدْعُنَا إِلَىٰ ضُرٍّ مَسَّهُ كَذَٰلِكَ زُيِّنَ لِلْمُسْرِفِينَ مَا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ. Over here, Quran has explained and put light on an important psychological difficulties or complexes of human mind. Man, when follows his emotions and does not follow our law, has this state that when some trouble visits him, then standing, sitting, or lying, he supplicates to us. But when that trouble becomes removed from him, then he walks away, turning his back as if he had never supplicated to us for his trouble. After that, he again starts to tread on the same path. Hence, see that the people who go outside the domain of our law, how their deeds appear so attractive and alluring, but ultimately their destruction arrives. And this is all because of the law of respite, that we are given time. The way we behave, that behavior has a certain respite attached to it. Guidance towards dealing with events in our life, some more reflections on this verse. This verse points to another very important side of human psyche. This is especially displayed in the religious world, where people pray day and night for their needs to be met or for the cure of some disease. And we witness it because some of us have come from the religious background, when through their efforts, despite supplications, they are continue making efforts. They manage to solve the issue problem. Some of them quickly forget, and some even claim that it was their own scheme and planning which helped them to overcome this issue. So some of them, they forget whether they ever prayed to Allah or God, whatever concept they had in their mind. Some of them emotively relate to Allah, but without understanding the law of requital. We need to relate to cause and effect to reach the bottom of the functioning of the human world. So what Quran is saying is that we have to concentrate and focus on the way system functions in human life, the way law of requital and law of respite works in our life. Because if everything is following laws, then understanding the laws is absolutely important to live a logical life based on rational thinking. The Quran states that such an emotive state gets created because of not understanding the laws of Allah, whether physical or moral. For example, the law of requital. When their trouble disappears, they make no effort to understand the rationale behind their troubles and problems. For example, in a grossly unjust world, human problems are never far away from anyone. There are continuous surprises in our lives, and we see it all around us, how things rapidly change in different countries. For example, country living peacefully like Ukraine, and suddenly the war is imposed on them. And this is all deliberately done by human beings. And those human beings living over there, they suffer because of this unpredictability. And of course, there is a physical suffering as well. This is because humans create problems, and those who supplicate do not make an effort to understand their causes and think that Allah will solve these directly. This creates a psyche which can never help to develop the self. So if everything is following laws, then we have to understand how Allah works in our life, that is through his laws. As we have gone through before as well, and the Quran very clearly points to this fact that Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen is the one which acts on behalf of Allah and carry out those duties which Allah has taken on himself. So that is why the language of the Quran we have to understand is from psychological point of view, that wherever Allah relates to himself, we have to look at it, that what are the duties of these human beings to which Allah is relating himself, that I do it, that means Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen will do it. And since there is no Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen, it will never get done. Here we look at another verse, فَأَمَّا الْإِنسَانُ إِذَا مَبْتَلَاهُ رَبُّهُ فَأَكْرَمَهُ وَنَعَمَهُ فَيَقُولُ رَبِّي أَكْرَمَانِ. And this is from verse 89-15, and the next verse is, and then it states, وَأَمَّا إِذَا مَبْتَلَاهُ فَقَدَرَ عَلَيْهِ رَزْقَهُ فَيَقُولُ رَبِّي أَهَانَنِ. And then Quran says, and then provides the answer by declaring, كَلَّا بَلَّا تُكْرَمُونَ الْيَتِيمَ. Meanings are explained in the next slide. So we have gone through these verses before as well, but I thought in relation to this verse 10-12, it is important to go over it again. Let us look at the meanings of verses 89-15-17. The reality is that when man turns his face away from the light of Wahi and gives up using his intellect and reasoning, then the concept of law disappears from his sight. The concept of law means this, that whatever happens to man, it is the consequence of some individual or collective deed of his. The one who does not have this reality before him thinks that whatever occurs is just a matter of chance. This is the consequence of his erratic belief. For example, when his life turns pleasant, he does not see what the causes were which made it pleasant. Because most of the time under the capitalist system, it is because of the wrong system that these things come to us. And we relate it to somehow Allah, that Allah has been very kind to me. We have gone over this point previously as well. He states that Allah bestows his bounties on whomever he wishes, i.e. there is no procedure and law with him. And next is when his life takes a turn for the worse, and sustenance becomes narrowed for him, he does not reason that this is the outcome of which wrong decision being made. For example, those people whose life has been destroyed, like countries like Afghanistan and Iraq and Libya, Yemen, Ukraine, you name it, and whole of Africa, for example, it is because of human deeds, because of human actions that those human beings are suffering. So we should keep that in mind, that Allah does not do injustice to anyone. It is human beings who do injustice to each other. He starts to wail and complain that Allah has humiliated him for nothing. Why these things are important to understand? Because then we stick to this path that is Sirat-e Mustaqim and make an effort to strive for the system of Deen. Otherwise, we give up. If I'm satisfied that my life is fine, I'm the beneficiary of the system, and somehow I related to that Allah has been very kind to me, then I'm not going to get up and do anything for the system of Deen. I'll just relax, and I will not see poor in the world. And that is the point which Quran is making and asking us to think through it. And we should think through it in the overall context of the message of the Quran. Say to these people who think like this, that this is wrong, that Allah ruins and humiliates for nothing. So this is the wrong system which ruins and humiliates us. You are humiliated because you had established such a society in which those human beings who became isolated were not respected and valued. Only those were considered worthy of respect whose party was strong, whose group was powerful. And we see it all around the world. Now let us look at the next two verses, 13 and 14. All crimes create their effects and nothing escapes the sight of Allah. وَلَقَدْ أَهْلَكْنَا الْقُرُونَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ لَمَّا ظَلَمُوا وَجَاءَتْهُمْ رُسُلُهُم بِالْبَيِّنَاتِ وَمَا كَانُوا لِيُؤْمِنُوا كَذَلِكَ نَجْزِي الْقَوْمَ الْمُجْرِمِينَ ثُمَّ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ خَلَائِفَ فِي الْأَرْضِ مِنْ بَعْدِهِمْ لِنَنْظُرَ كَيْفَ تَعْمَلُونَ. And this verse 10-14, لِنَنْظُرَ كَيْفَ تَعْمَلُونَ. So everything in the word is accountable. So that is the way we should look at it, that the way we are living our life, every day we should look at it, that what is accountable in this and what have I done? Have I done anything wrong? And is my life according to the values of the Quran to the best of our ability? Even in a non-deen system, we should keep it in mind. According to this very law of respite and requital, we have destroyed numerous nations when, by adopting transgression against our laws, they resorted to injustice and tyranny against the people. Our messengers came to them from our direction with clear laws and evidence-based reasoning, but they did not acknowledge their truth and they became destroyed. We give recompense in the same way to criminals of every era for their acts. We have made you the successor of these former nations so that it is witnessed what kind of works you enact. Whatever kind of deeds you do, the decision about you will also be in accordance with it. Our law of requital is equally applicable to everyone. One point can come in our mind that this does create stress and worries us as well, this accountability. But this is the way we have to be. If we are not a bit worried and concerned about our life and what is going on around our world, then we are not going to put in our best towards the system of Deen and trying to understand it better. Because being concerned is the first step towards getting guidance and then making it our Eimaan stronger and stronger with the passage of time. All deeds in human life have consequences. After pointing to the conditions which a non-Quranic society and human intellect have created, the Quran has invited us here to look at those people from the past who, after getting adequate warning and time, did not hold themselves accountable for their deeds. The day we think that we are not accountable and we are here just to pass time and enjoy our life, and this is not my concern that what is going on in the world, that is the day we have literally killed ourselves. And that is to which, because the whole point of giving us rational thinking ability and reasoning power is to think. And animals are not self-conscious. They don't have rational thinking. So they are not accountable, but we are. So what is given to us, we have to make use of it cognitively. They did zulm, that is injustice, and as a consequence were destroyed in this life as well as of the hereafter. And zulm also, Quran says that when we do not use our rational side and reasoning, then we are in fact doing zulm to our own self. We need to keep this in mind all the time, that when Allah mentions ruin and destruction, we need to look at human life as one continuous whole from here in this world to the hereafter. Otherwise, we witness that the powerful and developed nations have all the conceivable conveniences of physical life, but nothing in terms of the aspects of development of their self. People with a superficial view may not fully comprehend this point. And this can be very deceptive. And this happens at the initial stages of coming to the Quran, that we think that why those people who have nothing to do with the Quran, they in fact, even if we give them the message, they reject it and move away. Why are they succeeding in the physical world? And this is something which we have to figure out ourselves. And we have gone through on this aspect in detail through various presentations, and it is covered in the books by Allama Pervez as well. Here, two preconditions are mentioned for the destruction of any nation. Firstly, they are to be warned, and secondly, they have the intellectual capacity to understand this. So if they do not have the intellectual capacity, or they are not willing to use their intellect, then they will suffer. And once they suffer, then that means that when they die, they do not have that self which can qualify for the hereafter. And this is a very important point for us to understand, because a lot of people at times think that, what about those who do not have Iman and do a lot of righteous deeds? And that point we have to understand by making an effort and by understanding the Quran's overall message towards humanity. Because without Iman, we cannot have that self which can relieve mankind from its problems. The messengers of Allah are mentioned here. However, warning can come from many directions, which may include some wise people within a society, books, the Quran, consequences of deeds, history, even protests by the suppressed masses, high crime, breakup of family life, etc. And we do get warned, because when we get wrong results of our deeds, even if we have made a right effort, because of the wrong system around us, we end up having negative consequences of some of our deeds which we do with good intentions. And that is something which should force us to think. Then the Quran admonishes us, Muslims who have the Quran, directly by stating, take care of your conduct and do not take your life lightly. The law of requital of Allah keeps every human deed in its sight and nothing escapes it. Next verse 10-15, Allah makes no exception. His law is very strict. وَإِذَا تُتْلَى عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتُنَا بَيِّنَاتٍ قَالَ الَّذِينَ لَا يَرْجُونَ لِقَاءَنَا آتِ بِقُرْآنٍ غَيْرِ هَذَا أَوْ بَدِّلْهُ قُلْ مَا يَكُونُ لِي أَنْ أُبَدِّلَهُ مِنْ تِلْقَاءِ نَفْسِي إِنْ أَتَّبِعُ إِلَّا مَا يُوحَى إِلَيَّ إِنِّي أَخَافُ إِنْ عَصَيْتُ رَبِّي عَذَابَ يَوْمٍ عَظِيمٍ. This part of the verse, Inni akhafu in asaitu rabbi azaba yawmin azim, which is coming out of the lips of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that even if I do wrong, I will be punished. I will get the consequences through the law of requital. When our perspicuous laws are presented before these people, then those people who do not wish to face our law of requital say that either you bring another Quran in place of this Quran or make some changes in its meanings in this one. I.e., they wish to get alterations made according to their wishes and vested interests in the immutable and eternal laws of Allah. And this has already happened, and we'll touch it in the next slide. Say to them that this matter is out with my domain of authority, that I could make alterations from my own side. My objective is only to obey which is sent down towards myself. If I disobey the commands of my Rabb, then his law of requital will not spare me as well. Hence, I am very fearful of its grip. Its punishment is very severe. Acquiring a psyche which understands the functioning of the human world. There is no possibility of any allowance in the laws of Allah. These are precise, accurate, make no exception, are just, work 24/7 under the direct supervision of Allah, and are immutable throughout his universe. And we know Quran is preserved for all times. So its original Arabic stays in place. Nobody can make a change. And that is a great blessing of Allah, because that eliminates the need for another messenger of Allah to come with a revived wahi. So Quran has everything which we require, all the permanent values, all the divine attributes which are required to establish the system of deen and to acquire that highly developed self which Quran wants us to acquire. And this is something which we should keep at the back of our mind and not digress from the teachings of the Quran. Hence, anyone communicating these laws to others must understand himself or herself how these relate to their own self's development. Having fully understood and become convinced of this, their applicability to the human self, they should let others know that these simply cannot be compromised in any respect, just like an established chemical formula. So in this verse, Quran makes it very clear that nothing can be changed in it. And if you try to change it, like Muslims have done, they will suffer then, because they will never be able to get the benefits which are associated with the pure Quranic teaching. The opponents did not have any conflict with the Messenger of Allah. It was with the teaching and guidance which he used to present. Hence, they wanted some alteration in it, because it went against their desires. And we have also seen that at the initial stages, when we come to the Quran, there might be a feeling that might be a bit difficult to follow. And these feelings arise because we are coming from a non-Quranic background towards the Quran. And the more we go into it, then we will realize that how many chains and wrong beliefs we get rid of. In fact, life has become very, very simple cognitively when we come to the Quran and fully grasp the Iman given in the Quran. In today's world, people have done the same in reverse order, i.e. contaminated it deliberately themselves and are now reaping the outcomes of this zulm. So what people have done is that they have contaminated the Quran, they have created their own books which follow their own desires, and they have gone there and they read the Quran for some kind of abstract swap purpose. And as a result, the life is messed up because their minds are messed up, their heads are messed up, and contaminated minds can never ever establish a system of deen. The messenger replied that he cannot make any amendments in this message. This is the evidence of this being wahi from the direction of Allah. Furthermore, Rasulullah never said this about any other thing except the Quran. Hence, it means that wahi is only within the Quran itself. Now, some more points on this verse. This means that the Messenger of Allah followed the Quran. Both appear in the verse. This is also an evidence of this fact that obedience of the Messenger is equivalent to obedience of the Quran. We can never acquire those benefits by contaminating the value system of deen given in the Quran. The Messenger and his companions followed the Quran as a complete formula and reaped its benefits by establishing a true system of deen. Next is the law of requital of Allah, from which even the Messenger of Allah cannot escape himself, as declared from his lips loud and clear, Inni akhafu in asaitu rabbi azaba yawmin azim. But why should he escape from it? He wanted it. In fact, what he's saying is for the benefit of others, whereas he himself is fully convinced. He's got a complete, firm conviction in the Quran that this will take me to that destination which it promises. This buries alive all those religious misconceptions and beliefs of intercession. It's very interesting that religious people go through these verses but never use the rational side of their mind and reason it. It means that the messenger is emphatically making it clear for all times that in the functioning of the law of requital, Allah holds the key to understanding the Quranic system of deen. As Allah does not go against his laws, in the same way, once we have acquired Iman in Allah, our conduct must also be the same, as this is how our self develops. Let's go to the next two verses. Human character and conduct help to understand each other. قُلْ لَوْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ مَا طَلَعْتُهُ عَلَيْكُمْ وَلَا أَدْرَاكُمْ بِهِ فَقَدْ لَبِثْتُ فِيكُمْ عُمْرًا مِنْ قَبْلِهِ أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ فَمَنْ أَظْلَمُ مِمَّنِ افْتَرَى عَلَى اللَّهِ كَذِبًا أَوْ كَذَّبَ بِآيَاتِهِ إِنَّهُ لَا يُفْلِحُ الْمُجْرِمُونَ. These people talk like this because they think that you keep presenting these commands by inventing them yourself, and you state that these are from Allah. And these doubts come in human minds, and particularly at the time when Wahi was being revealed. Nowadays, our life is much better because whole Quran is before us, and we have rational minds, and we reason it, and we can figure out ourselves. In fact, Allama Pervez has made our life very easy in many ways. Say to them that I am not a stranger among you, that you cannot find out what my character is. Before this proclamation of Nubuwwat, I spent a lifetime among you. What kind of evidence does this life of mine provide to you? So over here, the messenger is presenting his own life and his character and conduct before them. Does it show that I am a liar and a cheat, or that I am a truthful and righteous person? And another point over here, which is very important, is that when somebody gives the message, of course, over here, there is an eminent and lofty personality of the Messenger of Allah. But in our case, when someone gives us the message and we pass on the message to others, we should try to explain to them that don't look at us, look at the message in relation to the development of your own self. You should reflect on this fact, and by making use of your intellect and reasoning, think that if this matter was not in accordance with the Mashiach of Allah, and if Allah had not wished to send this knowledge of Wahi to you, then I would never have presented these before you by inventing them myself. Lies and fabrications are contrary to my way of life. And that also means that we who have come to the Quran, we also must not have these things in our personality, in our psyche. And if we have, we should identify them and then get rid of them over a period of time through our efforts, through solid deeds. After this, reflect on this fact that an individual who invents things himself and then states about them that these are the Wahi of Allah, what a big criminal he will be. On the other hand, that individual is no less of a criminal in front of whom the truthful Wahi of Allah reaches, and he falsifies it. So both points are covered. That if somebody is telling lies and says this is from Allah, like we have the contaminated version of sectarian Islam, that means they are committing a crime against their own self. And those to whom pure Quran is presented and those who present a contaminated Islam as well, both are criminals in the sight of Allah, or they are doing crimes against their own self. These are both equally criminals, and the law of Allah is that it does not let criminals succeed in their program. Very powerful statement over here, innahu la yuflihul mujrimun, that if we make effort with full focus and intensity and never give up, the results will materialize at some later stage. The law of requital functions through our character and conduct. Since in the receipt and communication of Wahi, the person of the messenger is involved, hence people do question personal character and conduct. Here the Quran presents the past character of the messenger as evidence, i.e., he has spent all his life among them, and this has been as someone with very high integrity and honesty. This aspect was never challenged by anyone in the society. Then implicit in this is the appeal to consider the nature of the invitation itself. Can it be the product of the human intellect? And that is important point, that can it be the product of the human intellect? And that is what disturbed these people, because they thought that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam never talked like this before. And now suddenly he is coming out with something which is hitting at the core of our wrong system, evil system. The messenger is saying that what is being conveyed, can it be the product of my intellect? How can it be when I never mentioned it previously? It is coming from outside for the guidance of all of us, which includes myself too. And there is a point of instruction for us as well, a point of guidance for us as well, that if we haven't been on the Quran previously, and once we come to the Quran and we pass on the message to others, the others will also react and they will say that this guy or lady, she never mentioned these things before, and suddenly now they are coming up with the Quranic message and saying this is pure Quran, never heard about it. At the same time, the Quran appeals to the rational side of the human self and states that if you wish to look at the veracity of the Quranic value system, then you need to use your intellect by raising its loftiness. Here it invites by saying, afala taqilun, because Quran is saying that increase the level of your intellect, your rational side, and then see that how things fall in place. Without applying akal, we cannot understand Allah's book. And Quran says, we have gone through this verse previously as well. لَقَدْ أَنزَلْنَا عَلَيْكُمْ كِتَابًا فِيهِ ذِكْرُكُمْ أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ. We know zikrukum over here means it is for your own eminence and loftiness. This will raise to a level where you will have a very high level of understanding in this life, even if the system of deen does not get established in your life, but you will qualify for that deen which is going to be there in the life of the hereafter. Another point which comes before us is that in judging people, check what kind of past he or she has had. And this comes out of that as well, that we should look at the past of other people and see that do they have any inclination to come to the Quran, because if they're not questioning their own creation, they're not questioning the world around them, they're very comfortable with them because of their own conveniences, then they're not going to come to the Quran. So leave them alone. What were and are their values which they follow, and what is their outlook about the issues of life? So there is a bit of effort involved here. So might have to look at it and judge and find out that what exactly the values which are being followed by others. But that should not put us off. We should still continue passing on the message, because that is how our own self develops. We now know the process of acquiring Iman from the Quran and should never become deceived by people. Next, there are two important points here. Those who do kufr and those who acknowledge Iman from their tongue but in practice falsify it. Both are liars according to the Quran, and they are liars because there is dissonance which comes out of their conduct and behavior. And they can never succeed because they are unjust and promote zulm. Just note the strong wording of the Quran when it declares them to be criminals. Next verse 10-18, understanding correct concept of Allah. وَيَعْبُدُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ مَا لَا يَضُرُّهُمْ وَلَا يَنْفَعُهُمْ وَيَقُولُونَ هَؤُلَاءِ شُفَعَاؤُنَا عِندَ اللَّهِ قُلْ أَتُنَبِّئُونَ اللَّهَ بِمَا لَا يَعْلَمُ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَلَا فِي الْأَرْضِ سُبْحَانَهُ وَتَعَالَى عَمَّا يُشْرِكُونَ. These people, after abandoning Allah, make such things their gods which can neither cause them any benefit nor harm. And they say that these gods will do intercession on our behalf before Allah, as if their gods will tell such things to Allah about them on the basis of which they will be declared pardonable. And this is a suicidal kind of belief system where people think that without following the Quran, they can land up in a better place in the hereafter. Say to them that, do you wish to inform Allah about yourselves through those whose own state is such that they have no knowledge of anything in the heavens and the earth? Allah is far beyond this, that he needs to find out the state of affairs through these things. He is far above those which you declare to be his partners. And we have gone through the concept of Allah, that it is very precise, and we have to make him our model in terms of the divine attributes which we have to acquire and then manifest them for the system of deen. Worship has nothing to do with deen. We know that Ya'buduna is translated as worship. The term Ya'buduna, abud, is related to obeying the commands and laws of Allah, or to function under the obedience of his book. If we look at the overall context, then these things leave no doubt that it means obedience, because without obedience, we cannot create a new word. It is not worship, because worship cannot create a new word. It is total waste of time. As is believed in the domain of religions, there is no concept of worship in the Quran. It is this concept of worship is because of looking for shortcuts in life, where human beings do not want to put effort to go against the wrong system, stand up against it, and stand up for the poor and do something positive, and where the change in system is absolutely essential if we want to bring good to the people. However, when these words appear about non-Muslims, then this will mean those gods or others whom they worship. Hence, it will be taken to mean worship, i.e. meaning of pleasing their gods. For example, idol worshipping will be worshipping in that sense that people's beliefs are messed up. The people who were addressed at that time of the revelation, this will mean their idols. But in today's word, human beings are also worshipped. And we can figure it out whether somebody is worshipping human beings or is worshipping the stone idols. They are considered to be the means of profit and loss. There is the belief and intercession about them. Here is an interesting comparison. Whilst people reject idol worshipping but consider it acceptable to have similar expectations from human beings, in fact, people follow their instructions and directions. So important is that we should question everything what is going on in our life and the laws which we have to follow in different parts of the world. And we should compare them as well and see the weaknesses in the whole justice system which is created by human beings. So even if we are following those laws in some land where we reside, we should look at it that those laws, even if we are following, are wrong in the first place. That is injustice in itself, the way those laws are defined and the way those laws are created. The Quran has also pointed to a serious psychological flaw here by stating that they do not have the ability to cause any profit and loss. This is obvious in the case of idols made of stones, but what about the pharaohs of the world? And this is something which we need to concentrate, and hopefully at some stage I will deal with it in more detail very incisively, because there is a very subtle, important point to which the Quran is drawing our attention. The Quran has pointed to this fact that create the system of deen with the psyche of Iman and a moment's self, and then you will witness that these pharaohs will not be able to cause any harm or provide any benefit. That is, true freedom will ensue. And obviously that if we want true freedom for everyone, then we have to understand our own selves at an individual level and then discuss it collectively. So that is important, because it's a very psychological issue where we understand that how many chains and the wrong beliefs we have got rid of, and what exactly is the state of our Iman at this point in time. And how do we understand the concept of Allah given in the Quran in terms of divine attributes? Because if we are not displaying those divine attributes, that means we are not understanding the concept of Allah which is given in the Quran. And this is then linked with the permanent values of the Quran. The outlook about the outer world will change in direct proportion to the change in the inner psyche in the light of the Quran. This is why shirk, which is the contamination of our beliefs in relation to Allah being a model, represents contaminated human psyche, which prevents ourselves from developing on the path of Allah. Let us go to the next verse, 10:19. Initially, mankind was one community before becoming divided. وَمَا كَانَ النَّاسُ إِلَّا أُمَّةً وَاحِدَةً فَاخْتَلَفُوا وَلَوْلَا كَلِمَاتٌ سَبَقَتْ مِنْ رَبِّكَ لَقُضِيَ بَيْنَهُمْ فِيمَا فِيهِ يَخْتَلِفُونَ. O Rasool, your invitation which these people oppose so much is nothing other than that you wish to make humanity as one universal brotherhood by removing differences. We cannot have peace unless humanity comes together within the permanent values of the Quran. Even if they want to make their own choices, that is okay. We have discussed it in following slides. And this is only possible if all human beings live life according to one divine code. This very thing is called Tawheed, which is the opposite of Shirk. Tawheed means oneness of Allah. This invitation of yours is neither any new guidance nor something impossible. The history of the communal life of mankind is this, that in the foremost era, when there was no mutual confrontation between their interests, all used to live as one brotherhood. After that, mutual interests began to create differences among them, and they became enemies of each other. It was possible that we could have created them in such a way that they could not differ, or if they had differed, we could forcibly remove those differences with our control. But we devised another process for this, because of which human freedom was not suppressed. We bestowed such a teaching through Wahi, through which these differences could be erased. The people with vested interests oppose this concept, but our program cannot be halted. Mankind is ultimately bound to become one universal brotherhood. Some of us at times get frustrated that why did Allah create us the way we are, because there are so many problems, chaos, and conflicts in the world, and could it be made peaceful without our effort? And that is fine as far as thinking is concerned, because that is the one which will help us to understand the question of our own creation, and why are we given choice and intent, and why are we given this body with the intellect and cognitive abilities. All these are related things which we need to understand, and Quran clarifies it. And we will see that all these things will clarified as we go through more verses. Differences arise under the unguided intellect. In the previous verse, after warning us about the gross harm of shirk and bringing out the significance of oneness of Allah, that is Tawheed, the importance of seeing the whole of mankind as one big brotherhood is presented here for our consideration. So Quran is also drawing our attention as students of the Quran that you should look at mankind as one community and create a desire within you to turn it into one community, one big ummah, through their own choice, not forcing it on them, because there are significantly higher benefits in having one mankind following one laws rather than being divided into few hundred countries. It is only through the Quran that we can fully comprehend the importance of this aspect of visualizing mankind as one ummah. Differences and party systems and sects and all these divisions which exist in today's world can never, ever give peace to mankind. These can never alleviate fear, because when human beings are divided within themselves, they will always look at other human beings with fear. So that is inbuilt, that is the part of the wrong system. And we cannot do without it. We have to come to the Quran to remove fear. Two aspects will help us to understand its immense importance. Firstly, وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. Secondly, يَا أَيُّهَا النَّاسُ اتَّقُوا رَبَّكُمُ الَّذِي خَلَقَكُم مِّن نَّفْسٍ وَاحِدَةٍ. And all children of Adam are blessed with intrinsic respect and dignity at a fundamental level as possessors of choice and intent. For example, they can be hurt by words, thoughts, and behavior. Each child possesses exactly the same I, that is nafs, and hence is equal as a human being the day that he or she is born. I thought to clarify it a bit more, because when Quran says وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ, that means all the potentials of being good, to manifest all these divine attributes and to follow these permanent values, has been kept in a human being. And if we have a wrong system so that these human beings cannot manifest it, cannot even think about it, they haven't been even given a chance that there is a better way of spending life, then we have to think very hard as students of the Quran that where has the humanity gone wrong and why people are not thinking on those lines. Why are they not appreciating their own existence, the value of their own self? And that is the point to which the Quran is drawing our attention. After declaring these two fundamental aspects of human status in the sight of Allah, he then declared, Ya ayyuhan nasu inna khalaqnakum min zakarin wa unsa ja'alnakum shauban wa qabaila lita'arafu. You are biologically born exactly through the same process of a man and a woman. Equality is clearly stated here, and then clearly stated that your biological appearance, languages, gender, family identity, etc. is for identification only. Let us be very clear as students of the Quran. Our appearance, our gender, and these nationalities, our tribal affinities, etc., are nothing more than for identification only. It does not reduce or enhances our value as human beings. What enhances it? Nothing more, nothing less. Then made it clear, Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum, that the one who wants to have a higher value of himself, then he or she has to become muttaqi as defined in the Quran. And just see, Inna akramakum, and then relate it with Laqad karamna bani Adama. That exactly the same root has been used over there, that is karam. And if we have the ability to become muttaqi, and when we become muttaqi, then we see the intrinsic value of ourself, that how it has acquired higher eminence and loftiness, which it could not acquire without the Quran. And then we relate it to other human beings who are deprived, who are not given this opportunity. And then we will see that how grossly unjust, tyrannical, and cruel the world we have around us. And that is something which we have to become extremely conscious of. The criterion of our rank among you is based on being muttaqi. Remember, this is from him who is Inna Allah alimun khabir. So we have to become alim and khabir to the best of our ability, so that we understand these things and then have a feelings for that. Allah with all his attributes knows and is well aware of what we do. So muttaqeen have to be also aware of all this, because that is how we strive towards the system of deen and we feel its need and its benefits. Notice the root karam, i.e. all those potentials related to the divine attributes within us can manifest through the Quran. Can we disrespect the being with all those latent potentials? And that is the question within us. Just see, if we hurt someone physically, of course we see that hurt. But if we hurt someone and they feel humiliated because of our words, and that is something which we have to keep it in mind, that what kind of a system we have where human beings are being humiliated and insulted every day by not allowing them to have their needs met. And they have to beg to others for their own needs. They have to expect others to help them because there is no system. Rather, we need to help bring these out and benefit in this life and be together in the hereafter. Just imagine the pleasure of forming this companionship called the Jamaat of Mu'mineen. Now we continue. If we recall, the Quran states in 238 that if we follow Allah's wahi, then humanity will become free from fear and grief or anxiety. That is huzn. In today's world, we can see divisions and differences. For example, nations, parties, religions, race, gender, language, sects, classes, age, tribes, castes, clans, statuses, etc. among human beings, despite being equal, possessing the same I at a fundamental level and deserving the same respect and dignity. This is something which demands our profound attention and reflection. Is it possible to think of the unity of mankind, or is it just a utopian idea? So if we think that it is a utopian idea, then Quran is not going to make any sense to us, and particularly these verses which are related to the unity of mankind. Here the Quran helps us to think at a much higher and wider expanse than the level of a non-Quranic intellect. It presents this as a potential possibility for the future when mankind is bound to come together. It is only prevented because of the absence of Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen. So those people who are exploiting other human beings, forget about it, they're not coming to the Quran. But that does not mean that we should not give them the message. By all means, we should give them the message, because the greater the opposition, the greater our self will develop. More rapidly it will develop. Here is another verse. كان الناس أمة واحدة فبعث الله النبيين مبشرين ومنذرين وأنزل معهم الكتاب بالحق ليحكم بين الناس فيما اختلفوا فيه وما اختلف فيه إلا الذين أوتوه من بعد ما جاءتهم البينات بغيا بينهم فهدى الله الذين آمنوا لما اختلفوا فيه من الحق بإذنه والله يهدي it's a big verse, and it's a very powerful verse, and I think Quran has left nothing to our imagination. It has asked us to think about it literally, and it makes things very, very clear. Explanation included in the next slide. Main points from the meanings of verse 213. Mankind initially was one ummah. And we know when human beings appeared on this earth, they didn't have any differences because they had plenty of land, and wherever they could go, they could travel. In fact, 200-300 years ago, if we see, there were no borders, there were no passports, visas, human beings could travel around freely. And with the passage of time, there are more and more chains put around the necks of human beings. Then differences started to appear among them. In order to eliminate these differences, Anbiya used to come. They used to remove these differences through that book which they used to receive from Allah. The aim of this process of guidance and righteousness was that by removing the differences of mankind to make them again into a universal brotherhood. This shape will become created by the obedience of the Quran. So if we are aiming to unite the world, the mankind, then that means our aim is exactly the same, which is Allah's aim. Every Nabi and Rasool received the book from the direction of Allah. Hence, the belief of a Nabi or Rasool without a book is against the Quran. The nation among whom there are differences and sects cannot be obedient to the wahi of Allah, period. All these sectarian Islam have nothing to do with the wahi of Allah or the obedience of Allah, so they can never ever get the benefits associated with the Quranic system of deen. They cannot even establish the system of deen. They cannot even think about it. The first and fundamental sign of a nation following the way of Allah is unity among them. This unity cannot become created among Muslims until they accept the Quran as their arbiter in every matter in which they differ. And it's a very deliberate act after understanding the pure Quran as a system of deen. And this is where Allama Parvez has done a great favor by putting all these aspects together, where Rububiyat and system of deen comes before us very clearly. Every Nabi, according to the book given to him, used to leave after creating unity, but after him, those people to whom that book was given so that they could act according to it, despite having such a teaching, through mutual arrogance and rivalry, i.e. the passion to excel each other, would start differing again. But to those people among them who had conviction in the truth of this code, Allah used to show them the path of avoiding differences according to his law. This is that very method through which Allah guides every one of those nations which wishes to avoid differences towards the balanced path of life. And that is Sirat-e-Mustaqim defined by the Quran. Then 19, is it possible to achieve universal brotherhood? And I put a question mark here because this is something which we need to come to terms with. The question which arises in our mind is, how can mankind come together when people do not have same ideology and outlook in life? The answer to this is very simple. We can see that even in today's world, people living within so-called modern welfare states are united by the economic benefits of the system. So on physical needs, people are united because wherever there is a better system where their needs can be met, they want to go to that land. But deep down, they are divided at various levels, for example, family, race, color, political affiliations, religious affinities, classes, etc. And we hear these terms all over the world that even the richest country like the United States, people say, oh, there is a polarization over there. Now there are far higher differences. There is a far big divide between rich and poor. And why is that? Because people who are at the helm of the affairs, they are grossly unjust. The prerequisite of such a system is the leadership based on Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen who have firm Iman in the Quranic value system and who manage it on behalf of Allah. If we look at the word, we will see that very hardly anyone is drawing attention to the human self and its development. And this is something which only comes out of the Quran very logically and forcefully and is based on evidence. Because every human being has a self. If we draw their attention to their own self, then some of them, not all of them, but gradually people will come to terms with their own rational thinking process and reasoning and really realize that through the rational thinking and reasoning, they themselves become wiser and their outlook becomes wider and higher. If it is a very flat structure system, then the majority of whose whole basic needs are being met and who also do not feel any fear gradually become free from huzn, then irrespective of their beliefs, they will conform to such a system. Because if human beings see that there is a benefit on that, even if they have arrived on that conclusion late, but ultimately the model itself becomes something which people then appreciate. People don't want to be humiliated. They don't want to beg from anyone else. And if that kind of a system is created where mutual respect exists and hereafter, the life of the hereafter is a clearly defined aim in front of them, then gradually it will appeal to their rational side, which is within them being their self. Because that is how human beings ultimately understand that this is in their own interest. Human beings like the freedom to choose and wish to make their own decisions. By possessing a rational and reasoning mind, people want to know the reason behind every permanent value and the way in which it is applied. Because once we get convinced about something intellectually, then we never give it up. The environment of Deen is highly rational, based on reason, and very transparent. Most people do not wish to create problems for others if their needs are met adequately. A rational mind will not create problems for others if he or she knows that it is in his own interest not to create problems. Because once you become the beneficiary of system, then you take care of the system because your own survival lies with the integrity of that system. Even in today's man-devised systems, there is a talk of global control, but this is with a view to restricting human freedom, and even more that they should do as they are told. And this is going on right in front of us. The things are getting bad to worse because those people who are at the helm of affairs, those who are called globalists, they don't have interest of mankind in their mind. And that is why, thinkers like Jordan Peterson said that these guys hate humanity. And they have come to this conclusion based on evidence. This kind of Iblisi mentality does not appreciate the manifesting of human choice and intent. Deep down, they do not value other human beings. And we have seen that how much emphasis Quran is putting on mutual affinity between human beings at self's level. Can a system of deen ever think of insulting another human being? And that is where the respect and dignity and value of every self will lie. Under the system of deen, human beings will keep the lofty aim of success and prosperity of this life linked to the life of the hereafter. For any lofty and elevated aim, most human beings become willing to accept the confines of the permanent values. In any case, in such a society, there is no accumulation of wealth, and it flows freely throughout the system like blood in the human body. On the accumulation of wealth and the issue of riba, we will talk about it at some point in the future. Let us look at the last verse for today's talk. Collective deeds manifest results after the time of respite is over. وَيَقُولُونَ لَوْلَا أُنزِلَ عَلَيْهِ آيَاتٌ مِّن رَبِّهِ فَقُلْ إِنَّمَا الْغَيْبُ لِلَّهِ فَانْتَظِرُوا إِنِّي مَعَكُم مِّنَ الْمُنْتَظِرِينَ. And these people also state this, that why does this Rasool not receive such a heavenly sign by observing which we can understand that he is really a messenger of Allah? O Rasool, you say to them that I invite you towards a system of life whose outcomes which are hidden from your eyes at this time will be established according to the law of Allah. But for this, a period of time will be needed. Hence, wait for that time when its tangible outcomes become manifested before you. I too wait for this with you. Those very outcomes will be the heavenly sign of my being truthful. Very important points covered here. 2 points. Conviction in one's mission is a must to help materialize the result. In the word of a religious belief system, people somehow think that the messengers need to do some miracles to prove that they are assigned this task from Allah, a consequence of non-rational thinking. This is the reason that all the religious books have noted various miracles reportedly performed by the messengers. Because human beings want shortcuts, and the things which they cannot do themselves, they expect messengers of Allah to do it for them, so that their intellect becomes convinced that since so-and-so can perform miracles, so the messenger of Allah or some human being with saintly or elevated powers. Here the Quran has made it clear that what is being presented will manifest itself when it is followed, and for which there is no need for any miracles, and there is no correlation between the two. The rational side of thinking says that I can do whatever other human beings can do. And if I expect other human beings to convince about their own rational side through a miracle for which he cannot provide any explanation, and I cannot understand that explanation, how it is going to increase my intellect, how it is going to increase my understanding of the Quran, how I'm going to help in the establishment of the system of deen. Another important point about the human psyche comes before us from the evidence of those people who hold religious beliefs that when false beliefs find a home in our minds, then these in turn affect our conduct and behavior in the outer world. As the Quran has stated very clearly, Inna Allaha la yughayyiru ma biqawmin hatta yughayyiru ma bi anfusihim. We have gone through this verse previously. If we wish the outer world to change, then we need to change our inner world first, and then stay together to make the difference in the outer world. And last is very interesting point, which is the second one. The next part of the verse is the declaration from the lips of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his companions that فَقُلْ إِنَّمَا الْغَيْبُ لِلَّهِ فَانْتَظِرُوا إِنِّي مَعَكُم مِّنَ الْمُنْتَظِرِينَ. Let everyone know that what is being noted here is that though the results are not yet visible tangibly, they will become evident once enough time is given to the formula of Eimaan and Saleh deeds. See the confidence and trust implicit in this statement of the Quran, that whatever we are doing in the light of the Quran, it will take time. The results are already getting established. It's that these results are not visible. Of course, these results are visible in the development of our own self, our own elevated eminence, and our own understanding is increasing very gradually and surely. So this is to where Quran is drawing our attention, that don't give up. What is being stated over here may be invisible at this point in time, but it will become tangible and visible after a short period of time. And with that, I come to the end of this presentation. Thanks for your time and for sharing this today. And please feel free to share it with your contacts. You may like to subscribe for future talks related to the Quranic system of Deen.